Every morning you do something you've never thought about. You wake up, you reach for your face and rub the crust from the corner of your eyes. That dry, gritty residue that builds up while you've been asleep. You've never wondered what it is. You've never wondered where it came from. You just wipe it away and start your day. But for centuries across Northern Europe, parents told their children that the crust wasn't just discharge, it was evidence. Proof that something had been at your face while you were unconscious. A creature, a figure that came in the dark every single night and visited the eyes of sleeping children. They called him the Sandman. You might know the name, you might not. But if you've ever heard someone say the Sandman is coming at bedtime, or seen a children's book about a gentle little figure who sprinkles magic dust to help you sleep, that's him. Or rather, that's what he became. Because the original Sandman didn't sprinkle anything. He threw fistfuls of sand into children's eyes until they bled, until the eyes fell out of their skulls, and then he collected the eyes, put them in his bag, and carried them somewhere that would keep you awake for the rest of your life if I told you where. That's the original. That's what European parents told their children at bedtime for centuries. At some point, without anyone deciding to do it, without anyone voting on it or announcing it, we erased the monster and replaced him with a lullaby. Tonight, I'm going to show you what we erased. I'm going to take you through the Sandman's real story, the folklore, the literature, the mythology, the science. And by the end of it, you'll never close your eyes at night the same way again. But before we continue, Late Mysteries exists for one reason, and that's to find the stories they buried, the ones too dark to be told during the day. They buried this one for a reason, and now we're going to dig it up. If that's what you're here for, hit subscribe and like this video, and I'll keep the candle lit. Now, let's find out what comes for you when the lights go out. Now, let's find out what comes for you. Every culture has monsters designed for children, creatures invented to frighten them into obedience. But the Sandman is different from all of them, because the Sandman doesn't target misbehavior. He doesn't come because you lied, or stole, or stayed out past dark. He comes at the one moment every child is most vulnerable, the moment they're trying to fall asleep. And what he does to them is something no child should ever have been told. The earliest known versions of the Sandman come from Northern Europe, Germany, Scandinavia, the Low Countries. The figure goes by different names in different regions, but the core of the story is always the same. A creature comes to children at night, carries sand, and if the child will not close their eyes, if they resist sleep, if they fight it, if they lie in bed with their mind racing the way every child does, the Sandman throws sand into their eyes. Not gently, not like dust, like gravel, like ground glass. He throws it hard enough that the eyes swell shut. Hard enough the eyes bleed. Hard enough, in some versions of the tale, that the eyes fall out of the child's head entirely. Then he takes them. He puts the children's eyes in a sack. He slings the sack over his shoulder, and he carries them to the crescent moon, where his own children are waiting. His children sit in a nest, like baby birds. They have crooked beaks, and they eat the eyeballs of human children, the way fledglings eat worms brought by their mother. That is the Sandman. That is the bedtime story. Parents told this to their children in the dark, in the same room where the children were expected to close their eyes and fall asleep. The same room where the next morning, the child would wake up and find dry, crusty residue in the corner of their eyes. The mucus that accumulates during sleep, the body's natural discharge, and the parent would point to it and say, "See? The Sandman was here. He was at your face while you were sleeping." The evidence was built into the body every morning. Every child, every set of eyes. The proof renewed itself with every sunrise. You could not escape it. You could not disprove it. Your own body testified against you. To understand why anyone would tell this story to a child, you need to understand the world that produced it. Northern European folklore was saturated with figures designed to frighten children into compliance. Scholars called them Kinderschreck, literally, child-frighteners. They are an entire category of mythology and remarkably specific in their function. Krampus comes for children who misbehave at Christmas. The Earl King steals children who wander into the forest. Frau Perchta slits the open bellies of children who didn't finish their holiday meals. The Baba Yaga of Slavic folklore lives in a house of chicken legs and eats children who stray from the path. Each monster has a jurisdiction. Each punishes a specific transgression. The child learns. Don't misbehave at Christmas. Don't go into the forest. Don't waste food. Don't leave the path. The Sandman's jurisdiction is unique among all of them. He doesn't punish disobedience in the usual sense. He punishes wakefulness. He punishes the failure to surrender consciousness. He comes at a precise moment when a child is lying in the dark, alone, in the liminal space between the waking world and the sleeping one. He says, "Close your eyes, or I will close them for you." Permanently. Think about what that does to a child's relationship with sleep. Every night you lie down. Every night the room goes dark. Every night you're supposed to do the one thing that makes you most vulnerable: lose consciousness, surrender awareness, let go of the waking world. And the story your culture has given you says that this act of surrender is monitored, that something is watching, that if you don't do it correctly, if you don't submit fast enough, the thing watching you will take your eyes. The Sandman doesn't guard the border between the waking and the sleeping. He enforces it. He's not a protector, he's a warden. The folklore was oral, scattered. He lived in nurseries and bedrooms, passed from parent to child, mutating with each telling the way all folklore does. For centuries, the Sandman existed as a whisper, frightening, effective, but never fixed. Never written down in a form that could be examined under a light and seen for what it truly was. Then, in 1860, a writer in Berlin decided to write it down. His name was E.T.A. Hoffmann. He was a composer, a painter, a judge, and an alcoholic who wrote his stories in the small hours of the morning in a wine bar called Lutter and Wegner. He was obsessed with the line between the real and the unreal, with automata and the uncanny, with the question of whether the things we see in the dark are projections of our own minds or something genuinely watching us from outside. He took the nursery whisper of the Sandman and turned it into a story that would haunt European literature for 200 years. A story so disturbing that a century after it was published, Sigmund Freud would read it and build an entire theory of human fear around a single word. That word was unheimlich, the uncanny. In 1860, E.T.A. Hoffmann published a story called The Sandman. It's not a fairy tale. It's not a children's story. It's one of the most psychologically devastating pieces of fiction ever written. And I'm going to walk you through it scene by scene, showing you what's actually on the page. Because what's on the page is a nightmare that nobody warned you about. The story begins with a boy named Nathaniel. He's young. He lives with his family in a comfortable home. His father is a kind man. His mother is a loving woman. Every night at a certain hour, his mother sends the children to bed with the same words: "The Sandman is coming." Nathaniel hears the heavy footsteps on the stairs, every night. Slow, deliberate, climbing towards the room where a visitor waits behind his father's study door. His mother says it's just an expression. The Sandman isn't real. It just means you're tired. Your eyes are heavy with sand. Go to sleep. But Nathaniel asks the nanny, and the nanny tells him something else entirely. The Sandman, she says, is a wicked man who comes to children when they won't go to bed. He throws handfuls of sand in their eyes. So much sand that the eyes spring bleeding from their heads. Then he puts the eyes in a sack and carries them to the moon, where his own children sit in their nest. And the children have crooked beaks like owls, and they pick up the eyeballs of naughty human children. Nathaniel is terrified, but he's also a child. and children are drawn to the things that frighten them with the same gravity that pulls them towards the fire. He wants to see the Sandman. He needs to see the Sandman. The terror and the fascination have become the same feeling, and neither one will let him sleep. One night, he hides in his father's study. He tucks himself behind the curtain and waits. The footsteps come up the stairs. The door opens, and the man who enters is not a monster from a fairy tale. He's a man Nathaniel knows. His name is Coppelius. He's a lawyer, a colleague of Nathaniel's father. He comes to the house regularly for what Nathaniel's father calls experiments. Secretive, late-night sessions behind the locked door of the study. Coppelius is enormous. His face is hideous. Hoffman describes a broad, coarse face, a hooked nose, green cat-like eyes, and a mouth that twists into a shape that Nathaniel can only process as malevolence made visible. His hands are huge. His voice fills the room. The two men work at something over the fire. The flames cast strange shadows. Nathaniel, peering from behind the curtains, sees shapes forming in the smoke. Faces without eyes, hollow sockets staring at him from the furnace. Then, Coppelius discovers the boy. The giant lawyer seizes Nathaniel. He drags him towards the fire. He screams. And what he screams is the worst thing a child in this story could hear. Eyes. Give me eyes. He grabs at Nathaniel's face. He reaches for the boy's eyes with hands that glow from the heat of the coals. He's going to burn them out. The Sandman from the nursery tale, the monster, the eye thief, the thing that comes in the dark, has turned out to be real. He's a real man with real hands. He's reaching for a real child's eyes. Nathaniel's father intervenes. He pleads. He pulls his son away. Coppelius relents, but not before the damage is done. The boy faints, falling into a fever that lasts weeks, and when he recovers, his mother tells him that Coppelius is gone. He won't be coming back. Everything is fine. It's not fine. A year later, Coppelius returns for another session of experiments. There is an explosion in the study. Nathaniel's father is killed. His face is blackened, scorched beyond recognition. Coppelius vanishes from the city that same night and is never seen again. And Nathaniel is left with something that will never leave him. The Sandman is no longer a nursery tale. He's a real man named Coppelius who murdered his father, who tried to steal his eyes, who disappeared into the world carrying the knowledge of what he did and the certainty that he would do it again. The mythological and the real fuse together inside the boy's mind, and he cannot separate them. He'll never be able to separate them. Years pass. Nathaniel grows up. He goes to university. He has a fiancée, a young woman named Clara. Her name means clear, bright. She sees the world as it is. She is rational. She is grounded. She tells Nathaniel that Coppelius was just a man, that the Sandman was just a story, that the trauma of his childhood was real, but the monster was not. She is everything the darkness in Nathaniel's mind is not. But he doesn't listen. He can't. Because one day an Italian barometer seller arrives in town. His name is Giuseppe Coppola, and at the moment Nathaniel hears the name, Coppola and Coppelius, the syllables rhyming, the old terror detonates inside him. He becomes convinced this is the same man. The Sandman is found. Coppola sells optical instruments, lenses, telescopes, spyglasses, devices for looking, devices for eyes. When he comes to Nathaniel's door, he opens his coat and displays his wares. And Nathaniel looks at the array of glass lenses and sees for one hallucinatory moment, not lenses, but eyeballs, thousands of eyeballs, staring at him from the lining of the man's coat. He buys a spyglass. He can't help himself. The fascination and the terror are the same feeling, and they drag him forward the way they dragged him behind the curtain as a child. And then he looks through it. Across the courtyard from his rooms lives a professor, a man named Spallanzani. In Spallanzani's window, Nathaniel sees a young woman. Her name is Olympia. She is beautiful. She sits perfectly still. She stares straight ahead with dark eyes that seem, through the magnifying lens of the spyglass, to contain a certain intensity, a depth, a soulfulness that Nathaniel has never seen in another human being. He becomes obsessed. He attends Spallanzani's salon. He sits beside Olympia. He talks to her. He pours out his heart, his childhood, his fears, his poetry, his grief. He tells her everything. She listens. She listens with an attention so absolute, so unwavering, that Nathaniel feels for the first time in his life truly heard. Clara argued with him. Clara challenged him. Clara tried to reason him out of his fear. Olympia does none of that. She sits, she gazes at him, and every so often she says a single word. Ah, that's it. Ah. Sometimes, ah. He abandons Clara. He declares his love for Olympia. He attends every event where she appears, sits beside her, gazes into those dark, still eyes, and talks and talks and talks, and she says, ah, and he calls it love. Other students notice something is wrong. They whisper about Olympia. Her movements are strange, too smooth, too regular, too mechanical. Her eyes never blink. Her hands are cold. She plays the piano with flawless technical precision, but zero feeling. She dances perfectly, but her body feels rigid in your arms. And one student says her eyes have something fixed about them, as if she has no power of sight. Nathaniel hears none of it. He has looked through the spyglass and seen what he wanted to see. The lens has shown him a reality that exists only inside his own projection, and he has mistaken the projection for the world. Then, one evening, he walks into Spallanzani's room, unannounced, and he finds the professor and Coppola locked in a struggle. They're fighting over Olympia's body, pulling her between them. Her limbs are twisted at angles no human body should allow. As Nathaniel watches, frozen, horrified, the childhood terror flooding back, Coppola wrenches the body away, throws Spallanzani to the ground, and runs from the room with Olympia slung over his shoulder like a sack of grain. Spallanzani lies on the floor, bleeding, and in his hands he holds two objects, eyes. Glass eyes. Olympia's eyes, ripped from her face during the struggle. Spallanzani looks up at Nathaniel and screams, "After him, after him, after him. What are you standing there for? Coppola has stolen my automaton. 20 years of work, body and soul put into it. The clockwork. He made the eyes. Coppola made the eyes." And then Spallanzani throws the glass eyes at Nathaniel's chest. They hit him, and they bounce off him and roll across the floor, staring up at nothing. At that moment, Nathaniel understands everything. Olympia was never alive. She was an automaton, a clockwork doll. Spallanzani built the body. Coppola, the Sandman, made the eyes. The thing Nathaniel loved, the thing that he poured his soul into and that listened with such perfect attention and said ah, in response to his deepest fears, was a machine. It had no soul. It had no understanding. It had glass where its eyes should have been and clockwork where its heart should have been. And the only thing it could do was sit there and reflect back whatever the person in front of it projected onto its blank, beautiful, mechanical face. Nathaniel screams. He goes mad, truly mad. Not the anxious, feverish obsession he's been living with since childhood, but a complete psychotic break. He is dragged from the room, raving about burning eyes and clockwork and the Sandman. He is committed to an asylum. Time passes. Nathaniel recovers, or appears to recover. He returns to Clara, kind, rational, clear-sighted Clara. She takes him back. They plan a future. It seems, for the first time in the story, that this is a man who might survive his own past. One afternoon, they climb a tower together, a church tower overlooking the town. The day is beautiful. Clara points to the landmarks, the mountains, the forests, a hedge that looks, she says, like a little man walking towards them. Nathaniel reaches into his pocket. He still has the spyglass. Coppola's spyglass. The lens that showed him Olympia. The lens that turned the machine into a woman. He hasn't been able to throw it away. The fascination, the terror, the same gravity that pulled him behind the curtain. He lifts it to his eyes. He looks through it at Clara. And whatever he sees, Hoffman never tells us what he sees, which is worse than any description could be, detonates the last fragile wall of his mind. He screams, "Pretty eyes, pretty eyes." He grabs Clara. He tries to throw her from the tower. Her brother, who has been climbing the stairs below, reaches them just in time and tears her away. Nathaniel is alone on the tower, screaming, spinning, "Pretty eyes, pretty eyes." The crowd gathers below, and in the crowd, looking up, is a face. Standing in the street, looking up at the tower. He's been there the whole time, or he has appeared at this exact moment, or he was never real, or he was always real. Hoffman doesn't clarify. The story doesn't clarify. That is the point. Nathaniel sees him. He stops screaming, he goes still, and then, with a final cry of, "Pretty eyes, pretty eyes," he throws himself over the railing and dies on the pavement below. And in the crowd, Coppelius vanishes. He's gone by the time the body has settled. The story ends with a single paragraph. Clara, we are told, was later seen sitting happily with her husband and 2 children in front of a country home. She found domestic contentment, moved on. The rational woman who saw the world clearly survived. The man who looked through the spyglass did not. Hoffman published this story in 1816 as part of the collection called Nachtstücke, Night Pieces. It was not marketed to children. It was not understood as a fairy tale. It was understood immediately as something new and terrifying. A story that took the familiar nursery figure of the Sandman and revealed what had always been hiding inside. The fear of losing your eyes is the fear of losing your ability to perceive reality. And Hoffman's genius was to show that the eyes can be stolen without anyone touching them. Nathaniel's eyes work perfectly. It is his perception that has been destroyed. The Sandman didn't take his eyes. He took something worse. He took the ability to tell the real from the unreal. And once that's gone, everything you see becomes a Sandman. A century later, Sigmund Freud read this story and wrote an essay about it. He called it The Uncanny. He argued that the fear the story produces comes not from the supernatural, but from the familiar, made strange. The Sandman is not frightening because he is unknown. He is frightening because he is almost known. He wears the face of someone you met. He sits in your father's study. He sells you barometers on the street. He is the thing that looks normal until the moment it doesn't. And the moment it stops looking normal is the moment you realize it was never normal at all. Freud's essay made Hoffman's story one of the most analyzed texts in literary history. But Freud missed something, or chose not to see it. The story isn't just about the fear of losing your eyes, it's about the fear of losing yourself. Nathaniel's childhood trauma didn't just scare him, it rewrote him. It changed the way he saw every person, every object, every relationship for the rest of his life. He can't love Clara because Clara is real, and reality is where the Sandman lives. He can only love Olympia because Olympia is a projection, a blank surface onto which he can paint a world that doesn't contain the thing he fears. The moment the projection is destroyed, the moment the glass eye rolls across the floor, nothing is left. The real world is unbearable. The false one has been taken away. There is nothing to go on. There is nowhere to go except off the tower. Hoffman turned a bedtime story into a study of how childhood terror follows you into adulthood and devours you from the inside. And the most disturbing thing about it is that nobody had to tell Hoffman this. He already knew. But Hoffman was not the last writer to look the Sandman in the face. 19 years later, another writer, the most famous children's author in the world, wrote his own Sandman story. And what he did with it, in its own way, was even more devastating because he made the Sandman gentle. He made him kind. He made him a friend. And then, in the very last paragraph, he reveals what the Sandman's friendship actually costs. In 1841, Hans Christian Andersen sat down and wrote the gentlest Sandman story ever told. A kind visitor who brings dreams to a good little boy. It sounds lovely. It is lovely until you reach the last page. And the last page will stop your heart. Andersen called his story Ole Lukoje. Ole has two umbrellas. One umbrella has beautiful pictures painted on the inside. This is the one he opens over the heads of good children. When he spreads it above them, they dream the most vivid, extraordinary dreams all night long. Colored worlds, adventures, wonders. The other umbrella is plain, blank, nothing on it. He opens this one over naughty children, and they sleep all night without dreaming at all. They wake up in the morning having experienced nothing. The night was a void. 8 hours of their life gone with nothing to show for it. That's a punishment most adults would miss. It sounds mild. No nightmares, no monsters, just nothing. But think about it from a child's perspective. The good children get color and magic and stories. The naughty children get emptiness. Darkness. Darkness without content. A rehearsal for a state that the child cannot name, but can instinctively feel, the state of not existing. The story follows a boy named Hjalmar. Ole Lukoje visits him every night for a week, Monday through Sunday, and each night brings him a different dream. Monday's dream is a garden where the flowers come alive and dance. Tuesday's dream is a painted world inside a picture frame. Wednesday is a boat ride through enchanted canals, and so on and so on. Each night more elaborate than the last. The dreams are charming, they're whimsical, they're exactly the kind of gentle bedtime fantasy you'd expect from Andersen. But woven through the week, something else is happening. On Wednesday night, Ole Lukoje takes Hjalmar to a wedding between two dolls from a toy box. On Thursday, a mouse wedding. On Saturday, Ole Lukoje takes Hjalmar to a wedding between the boy's own sister and a man she has not yet met. Hjalmar is being walked gently and incrementally through the milestones of a human life: birth, play, courtship, marriage. Each night the dreams age. Each night time is passing faster than Hjalmar realizes. Then Sunday comes. On Sunday night, Ole Lukoje doesn't bring a dream. Instead, he shows Hjalmar a picture, a portrait, and he tells the boy something that reframes every gentle, every charming dream that came before. He tells Hjalmar that he has a brother. I have a brother, Ole Lukoje says. He's also called Ole Lukoje, but he only comes to each person once. The brother puts you on a horse, he tells you a story. If you have lived a good life, the story is beautiful beyond description. If you have lived a wicked life, the story is terrible beyond endurance. And either way, beautiful or terrible, saint or sinner, you never wake up. The brother is death. Andersen, the master of children's literature, the man who gave the world The Little Mermaid and the Ugly Duckling and Thumbelina, wrote a bedtime story in which the gentle, kind, dream-bringing Sandman is the literal brother of death. They're siblings. They do the same job. One puts you to sleep every night. The other one puts you to sleep forever. The only difference between them is whether you wake up. This was not Andersen's invention. He was drawing on something far older. In Greek mythology, Hypnos and Thanatos are twin brothers, sleep and death. They are the sons of Nyx, night herself, and they live together in the underworld, a cave where the sun never reaches. Homer describes them in the Iliad working together to carry the body of a hero, Sarpedon, from the battlefield. Sleep on one side, death on the other. Twins carrying a corpse between them. The image is on ancient Greek vases, the two identical young men with wings, cradling a dead warrior. You cannot tell which is sleep and which is death. That's the point. Ovid placed Hypnos in a cave surrounded by poppies, the flower from which opium is derived. The god of sleep lives in a field of narcotics. His cave is in the land of the Cimmerians, where the sun never shines. The river Lethe, the river of forgetting, flows past the entrance. Sleep lives beside forgetting, in darkness, surrounded by the chemistry of unconsciousness. The mythological and the pharmaceutical were already intertwined 2,000 years before anyone put laudanum in a baby's bottle. The Romans painted Somnus, their name for Hypnos, as a young man with wings on his temples, carrying a horn of opium and a branch dripping with the water of the river Lethe. Sleep brings two gifts, unconsciousness and forgetting. Every night, you receive both. Every morning, you lose what happened in the gap. Hours of your life erased. Events that occurred. Dreams, paralysis, the passage of time that you will never remember. You wake up and the night is gone, and you accept this as normal because what choice do you have? The Greeks understood that sleep and death are the same experience with different durations. Every night, you undergo a temporary death. Your consciousness ceases, your body looks motionless, your awareness of the world disappears. The only difference between sleeping and dying is that one of them reverses, and you have no guarantee, no contract, no promise written anywhere that it will reverse tonight. Andersen knew all of this. He put it in a children's story and disguised it as a week of lovely dreams. And on the last page, he pulled back the curtain and showed the child what was really there. The Sandman's brother comes only once, and he's already on his way. But the mythology of sleep goes deeper than the Greek twins and Danish fairy tales, because across the world, in cultures that had no contact with each other, no shared text, no common ancestry, people were describing something else. Not a figure that brought sleep, but a figure that came during sleep. That appeared in the room, that pressed down on the lungs, that paralyzed the sleeper and watched them with eyes that didn't blink. And the terrifying thing about this figure is that science can explain it, but the explanation doesn't make it any less frightening. Everything I've told you so far is folklore, stories, literature, things that were written and told and passed down. But what I'm about to tell you is something different, because the experience I'm about to describe isn't a story. It's a medical phenomenon. It happens to millions of people, and every single culture on Earth has built a monster to explain it. You wake up, your eyes are open. You can see the room, your ceiling, the wall, the shapes of furniture in the dark. You're conscious, you're awake, your mind is awake, but you cannot move. Your arms will not respond, your legs will not respond. Your chest feels compressed, as if something heavy is sitting on it. You try to turn your head, and it will not turn. You try to call out, and your voice will not come. You're locked inside your own body, conscious and paralyzed, staring at the ceiling, unable to do anything except lie there and feel the growing, suffocating certainty that you are not alone in the room. Something is there. You can feel it. You can sense its weight, its presence, its attention. It is watching you. It is close, and you cannot move. You cannot scream, and you cannot scream, and you cannot close your eyes. And you are more afraid than you have ever been in your life. This is sleep paralysis. It's a real medical condition. It affects, by some estimates, 8% of the global population at least once in their lives. In certain demographic students, people with irregular sleep schedules, people with psychiatric conditions, the rates are significantly higher. The mechanism is well understood. When you enter REM sleep, the phase of sleep where dreaming occurs, your body sends a signal that paralyzes your voluntary muscles. This is called atonia. It is a safety mechanism which prevents you from physically acting out your dreams. Without it, you would punch, kick, run, and scream in your sleep. Atonia keeps you still, while your mind races through the architecture of dreams. Sleep paralysis occurs when you wake up before the atonia releases. Your conscious mind turns on, your body stays off. You're awake inside a body that is still locked, in the paralysis of sleep. And the dream-generating parts of your brain are still partially active, and they project the remnants of the dream state onto the waking world. The presence in the room, the weight on the chest, the figure in the doorway, these are hypnagogic hallucinations. Dream images overlaid onto real perception. And your eyes are seeing your actual room, but your brain is populating it with something from the other side. That is the clinical explanation. It is accurate, it is well documented, and it doesn't matter, because when it's happening to you, when you're lying in the dark, unable to move, feeling something pressing down on your chest, sensing a presence that you cannot turn your head to see, no amount of scientific understanding will help you. You are experiencing in real time the thing that every civilization on Earth has been trying to describe for thousands of years. In Old English and Norse mythology, the creature is called a Mara. She sits on your chest while you sleep. She crushes the breath from your body. The word nightmare comes from her name. Night Mara, the night rider. The word you've been using your entire life to describe bad dreams is actually the name of a demon. You have been invoking her every time you said, "I had a nightmare," without knowing it, naming something that people once believed was a living entity that entered your bedroom and sat on your body in the dark. In Japan, the experience is called kanashibari, literally binding with metal. The feeling of being bound, locked, held in place by invisible chains. In Newfoundland, it is the old hog, an ancient woman who sits on your chest and presses the air from your lungs. In Brazil, the pisadera, a crone with long fingernails who walks on rooftops and descends onto the chests of those who fall asleep, face up after a heavy meal. In the Middle East, the jinn in Thailand, Fayam in Turkey, the Karabasan in the Hmong traditions of Southeast Asia, the Dabtsog, a nocturnal pressing spirit so feared that researchers have linked it to a wave of sudden, unexplained deaths among Hmong refugees in the United States in the 1980s. Young, healthy men dying in their sleep with no medical cause ever identified. The community's explanation was the Dabtsog, the spirit that followed them across the ocean. Every culture, every continent, every century, the same experience, the same paralysis, the same weight on the chest, the same presence in the room. The details change. Sometimes it's a woman, sometimes a shadow, sometimes a cat, sometimes an old man, sometimes a formless pressure that has no shape at all. The architecture of the experience is identical, and it's identical because the experience is real. The physiology is real. The brain's response to waking up inside atonia produces the same hallucinations across every culture because the mechanism to produce them is built into the human body. The monster is different, but the machine that manufactures the monster is the same. The Sandman lives in this space. He's the European version of something that every human civilization has encountered at the threshold of sleep. The figure that appears when consciousness flickers, between on and off, when the body is frozen and the mind is exposed, when you're neither fully asleep nor fully awake, trapped in the corridor between the two. He throws sand in your eyes. The Mara sits on your chest. The jinn presses you into the mattress. The Dabtok steals your breath. They're all describing the same doorway. And the doorway opens every night. You have walked through it thousands of times. You just don't remember what you saw on the other side. For thousands of years, the Sandman was a warning, a monster, a brother of death, a name for the thing that comes when you're helpless. And then, in the span of about 100 years, we erased all of it. We took the creature that stole children's eyes and put him on a greeting card. The question nobody asks is, why? And the answer is more unsettling than the monster ever was. The transformation happened slowly, and then all at once. By the mid-19th century, A shift was underway in how Western culture understood childhood. The Romantic movement had reimagined children as innocent, pure, closer to nature and to God. The Victorians, for all their brutality, were building the modern idea of childhood as a protected state, a period of life that should be shielded from the harshness of the adult world. Nurseries became sanctuaries, bedtimes became rituals of comfort, and the stories told at bedtime began to change. The Grimm brothers, who had collected the darkest folk tales in the German-speaking world, began editing them. The first edition of their tales, published in 1812, was full of cruelty, sexual violence, and death. Then, the seventh edition, published in 1857, had been softened. Mothers replaced stepmothers as villains. Stern figures were softened into gentler ones, and some were removed entirely. The stories were sanded down, edition by edition, like stone worn smooth by water, and the process took decades, and it was deliberate. The Sandman underwent the same erosion. By the late 19th century, children's book illustrations were showing the Sandman as a small, gentle figure carrying a bag of golden dust. Not a monster, not a warden, a visitor, a friend. The sand he carried was no longer a weapon. It was a gift. It didn't destroy the eyes. It made them heavy. The entire function of the figure was inverted, from a creature that punished wakefulness to a creature that rewarded sleep, from a threat to a comfort, from a monster to a lullaby. By the early 20th century, the transformation was complete. The Sandman appeared in children's stories, animated films, greeting cards, and nursery decor as a benevolent, grandfatherly figure who loved children and wanted nothing more than to help them dream. The eyes he once stole were now the eyes he gently closed. The bag of eyeballs became a bag of dream dust. The nest of owl children on the crescent moon became a serene image of the Sandman sitting on top of the moon, sprinkling sleep across the rooftops. Then came the song. In 1954, the Chordettes released Mr. Sandman. It was a #1 hit. It is to this day one of the most recognizable melodies in popular music. And the lyrics ask the Sandman to bring not sleep, not unconsciousness, not the temporary death that the Greeks recognized, but a dream. A romantic dream, a lonesome dream about a partner. The Sandman has been fully domesticated. He is no longer a figure of the night, he is a figure of desire. He brings not oblivion, but fantasy. Not darkness, but romance. The transformation from eye thief to matchmaker is total. Today, there are Sandman-themed sleep apps, Sandman-themed nightlights, Sandman-themed nightlights, Sandman-themed ASMR channels with millions of views. The figure that once existed to terrify children into closing their eyes is now used to sell them a better mattress. The monster has become a brand. The warden has become a wellness product. Here is where I am going to say the thing that nobody wants to hear. We didn't sanitize the Sandman because we became kinder. We sanitized him because we became afraid of a different kind of fear. The original Sandman told children the truth. Not the literal truth. There is no man with a sack of eyeballs climbing the stairs, but the emotional truth. The truth that sleep is not safe. That the transition from waking to sleeping is a surrender. That you lose yourself every night and you cannot control what happens in the gap. That the night contains something. Not necessarily a monster, but something. The loss of consciousness, the vulnerability of the body, the impossibility of knowing what happens to you when you're not there to witness it. That truth is terrifying, and the modern world decided it was too terrifying for children. So we removed it. We replaced the monster with a friend. We replaced the threat with a comfort. And in doing so, we didn't just change a story. We changed the relationship between human beings and the night. For thousands of years, people went to sleep, knowing the boundary between wakefulness and unconsciousness was a dangerous crossing. Something watched over it. The price of sleep was vigilance, or failing vigilance, acceptance of the risk. The Sandman wasn't just a monster, he was an acknowledgement. He was the culture's way of saying, yes, sleep is terrifying. Yes, you lose yourself. Yes, you lose yourself. Yes, the night is real. Here is the name for the thing you're afraid of. Now close your eyes. We took the name away. We took the fear away. And we replaced it with a lullaby that says, there is nothing in the dark. Sleep safe, you are protected, nothing is watching. But the body knows better. 8% of the population will at some point in their lives wake up paralyzed in the dark, unable to move, unable to scream, feeling something is pressing down on their chest, sensing something in the room they cannot turn their head to see. And they'll have no framework for the experience. No name for it, no mythology that prepared them, because we threw the mythology away. We decided the stories were too frightening, and we replaced them with nothing. And the experience, the ancient, universal, physiologically inevitable experience of the threshold between sleep and waking, still comes. It has always come. It always come. It always comes. It has been coming since before we had language to describe it, and it will keep coming long after we've forgotten every story we've ever told about it. The Sandman wasn't a monster. The Sandman was a warning, and we silenced him. Think about that tonight, when you lie down, when you close your eyes, when the room goes dark, and your body begins the ancient process of shutting itself down. The muscles relaxing, the heart rate slowing, the consciousness dimming like a lamp being turned by an unseen hand. Every morning, you wake up and rub the crust from the corner of your eyes. You've done it thousands of times. You've never thought about it. It's nothing. It's just sleep. It's just the body's discharge. It's just the dried mucus that's accumulated while you're unconscious. But for thousands of years, people looked at the crust and they knew what it meant. It meant he'd been there, at your face, while you had gone. The Sandman didn't bring you sleep. Sleep brought you the Sandman. That's the Sandman, the real one. The one that's been hiding behind the lullabies and the sleep apps and the song from 1954 that turned a monster into a love letter. A figure who stole children's eyes. A story that destroyed a man who couldn't tell the real from the unreal. A brother of death. A name for the thing that presses on your chest when you wake up, paralyzed in the dark. And a warning about sleep, about vulnerability, about the nightly surrender of consciousness that we decided was too frightening to keep. So we turned him into a friend, and we forgot what he was. But the crust is still there every morning in the corner of your eyes. If this changed the way you see the Sandman, subscribe to Late Mysteries, where we illuminate the dark corners of history and the stories that live beneath the ones we tell ourselves. Until next time, I'll keep the candle lit.